Starting with let people. Here's Nita. Welcome.
Nada is on?
Yes.
Okay.
Cynthia. Laura Marie. Briggs. Janice Bennett. Okay. Somebody. So Janice will be joining us shortly. And it looks as though somebody else just drove. That might be Jessica. So we'll, the usual technical miracle is taking place. But don't get nobody get cocky about it because you know what will happen. It will just go down hard here. Janice, can we do a sound check with you? Make sure we can hear you.
Good evening, everybody. I wanted to be there so bad. Unfortunately, I rolled my ankle. And doctor's orders.
Jeez.
So that's it.
I'm having a string of bad luck here in management and administration and oversight, so everybody be extra careful. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. It's been a bit of a scramble, but this is the regular monthly meeting of the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners and the High Rock Home LLC Board of Commissioners. And to start the meeting, I'm going to call the roll call. We have to do everything by voice, roll call votes here because Janice is not with us, unfortunately. So Reg Foster is here.
Eleanor Evans is here.
Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk here.
Janice Bennett here.
So I declare that we have a quorum with all our commissioners here, and I just wanted to note that adequate notice of this meeting was provided by the Secretary of the Needham Housing Authority and public notice that was dated February 13 and sent to the town clerk and posted at that time and the other usual places, hopefully. And this is also a hybrid meeting. It is being recorded. This may be one of the last hybrid meetings we have. I don't know what's going to happen after next month when the special emergency order signed by Governor Baker expires, but I know that they're working on some sort of replacement set of guidelines and regulations for that. So enjoy it while it lasts at all. I'm going to start with a few announcements from the chair. First of all, given what's on the agenda tonight, I have asked and Penny Kirk has kindly volunteered to be the secretary pro tem for the meeting, since the assistant executive director is also a subject of the meeting agenda tonight, and that just seemed like the better thing to do. And I can say Penny is an expert, and it'll be a pleasure to have her write the minutes and see if the rest of us can find any typos in them here. I doubt we will. Secondly, I think everybody has heard by now that Steve Merritt took a fall a week ago Friday and took him into the hospital. He is out of the hospital as of a few days ago and resting comfortably at home and recuperating. And he sends his greetings to everybody, but he's under doctor's orders to recover and not do things strenuous and so forth. We are very fortunate that we have our assistant executive director, who I can't see down the table there, but to help step in the breach, and Nada and the other excellent staff. So as far as I know, the trains are running on time and things are getting done. And that's great. We're really grateful for the staff to step into the breach here. He's not got any kind of medical life threatening illness at this point. He just recovering. He has his next doctor's appointment next Wednesday. And he will be cleared probably, most 100%, 99% likely to return to what they call euphemistically a reduced schedule, which means we'll be without Steve for some period of time, not forever, but some period to be determined. And but it does mean that Steve can help out with things that he's essential for doing and has already started to do that, I think, slightly against doctor's orders. And Cheryl, do you feel like you have the support you need from everybody? And Nate, the same question for you.
Yes, everything is going well.
I don't know if I could do this without eye contact with you down the
I
table
think I
here.
should probably come and sort of sit between.
I'm as close, I got as far down here as I can do
I'm gonna
here.
sit between Helena.
That would be great. So that's a yes. I think things are happening
Yes.
and that's good. So important to keep the day-to-day processing going here. The third thing I guess I want to turn to the board on the agenda is the agenda went out in its present order. Where we have the board that took a vote last Saturday to request that Cheryl Gosman come for an interview for our open executive director position. Those of you who attended the board meetings in the last couple know that we had a search going for 8 or 9 months, 2 rounds. And we had some candidates, but they dropped out before we could interview them, but we did have an internal candidate, which is Cheryl. And by the way, that was a unanimous vote on the part of the board last Saturday. And so here we are to do the interview tonight, probably is the very most important piece of our business tonight. One could argue the most important thing that we ever do as a board, which is to find a good leader for the Needham Housing Authority. So I'm going to ask the board members, are you okay if we make this the first agenda item?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to do this also because I want to allow as much time as we all need, including resident and tenant questions. And we run out of time towards the end of the meeting, we'll do the other agenda items in a hurry or schedule a special meeting here. So with that, are you ready, Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, as the sort of order of business, oh, and by the way, we'll come back to just general resident input after the interview. So, appreciate residents here to kind of hold that. We're just going to be focusing on interviewing, doing the formal interview process.
Are you gonna allow people that are online to ask a question?
Absolutely, and somebody, hopefully, usually Eleanor is very good at noticing people with their hands up here. Let me just note for the record that we have 4 attendees tonight: Carol Briggs, Cynthia Alpana, and Laura Marie, and Blake, I guess we have dialed in twice here. Maybe those are 2 separate people, actually, not a couple. So I think what we'll do is start with resident questions, interview questions. Bearing in mind that that we're looking for somebody who hopefully will be here for the rest of her career. And so and also bear in mind many of us know her, which is a good qualification, but we should do this as a formal interview. The minutes from this meeting have to be submitted to DHCD. So if we make any kind of hiring recommendation tonight, it's subject to approval by DHCD, and an inch or 2 or 10 inches of paperwork that needs to be sent in next week. But one of the things is the minutes. So these questions and answers will be part of what is being submitted as part of the overall, package to DHCD for their approval here. So with that, I think I've got everything. So I'd like to invite Jessica, who's looking at her phone a little bit over there, and preparing for a question. I asked Jessica as our leader of the tennis association up in Seabed's Cook to be the first interviewer. And then we'll just make the rounds to other people who are here and other people who are online. And if we need to make, we'll make one round, and then if we need to make another round, we'll do that. And then we'll go to the board for questions, and then proceed from there. So Jessica, you have the floor. And may I request you, we know the owl doesn't do very well in this room.
Sure.
If you don't, you're sort of, you need to be sort of over on that table. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
People online can hear.
Oh, yeah, they can-
Anybody who's online that can't hear, like Dennis, just let us know. But go ahead.
So I actually have just two questions. How would you describe the how you see the value in this position if you were to be appointed to the position, but also, like he said, the longevity? What are your plans as far as longevity? I mean, yeah, that's basically just down to the point.
Thank you. That's a great question. I also want to just thank everyone for being here this evening. Thank you for your support. I also want to thank the board for putting this together, and really appreciate that. And thank you for that question. It's a great question. So I feel like I mentioned this to Curtis earlier, that I have grown up to this position. You know, I am a former resident. I moved to Captain Robert Cook Drive in 1993. And I was a member of the Cooks Bridge Tenants Association. I was secretary, vice president, and president. And I absolutely have a passion for this position because of my experience of having lived in housing and lived in Needham as a homeowner as well, you know, and now a renter in a very tiny studio apartment. So, you know, I'm looking at it from 360, if you don't, you know, if you know what I mean. But my passion, first and foremost, will be for the residents. And my goal is to, you know, foster that. I don't see it on your flyers anymore, but there used to be, when I was president of the Tenants Association, I used to have a logo that said, "Your voice matters, your voice counts."
Okay.
And it was always my intention to advocate that to the housing authority, that their voice matters, and also to the residents that your voice counts. And so I bring that passion with me. That has come up. I have grown up with that and bring it to where I'm at now, at this side of the table. I've been on the other side, now I'm on this side. And that's what I bring to the position. I have a lot of, you know, goals on how I see things transpiring, thinking about those now. But as I said, you know, my passion is for the residents, so that while living here in Needham, in this beautiful town, that they feel good about where they live, and that they're heard, and that they're part of the decision-making process of how things transpire through the, you know, as we move forward with a lot of change that's coming down the pike. I hope I answered that question for you. Yeah,
You said that.
I'm gonna warm up. I'm a little nervous, but I'll warm up.
No, I'm all set. I don't want to.
You wanna go around that way?
Thank you, sir.
Well, who would like to go next in the room? And then anybody who would like to ask questions, who's logged in online, please just go ahead and put your hand up now. And we'll get to you when we work through the people here in the room here. Go ahead, Ross, you're next.
Let's see. I almost hate to do this, but a few months ago, I asked you for some information, time and place of the meeting, and you said it wasn't subject to open meeting laws. Wondering, how are we gonna resolve that? Can we ask the Attorney General what might apply? It was to attend an interview like that, just like this. You know, I always thought that they were public, you know, but I don't know. But that's by the boards, but in the future, you know, we had a what do you call it, kickoff meeting. And I asked for the roster of attendees, you know.
Can you turn that into a question? Like,
Yeah,
how can we do a
yeah.
better job doing
Yeah.
that sort of thing? So we get the Q&A into the minutes here.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, I guess the question is the same there. What information is going to be accessible to the public? Because I haven't received that roster yet. I thought I was going to get it that evening. All I had to do was take a picture of it, you know? So.
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
How free are we going to be with the public? You know, how are we going to resolve it? Who's going to decide, you know, and when? If it's
Yeah.
3
yeah,
months.
you gotta ask the question and then let her respond, and let's try not to do multiple questions.
Yeah.
In, you know, because
I'm trying to
once,
couch the question,
yeah.
but how are we gonna resolve that issue of me gaining access and the public gaining access to the public record that we're generating all the time?
So your first question about the architect meeting. Yeah, you did not attend that meeting. I had mentioned to you that it was a subcommittee of the board, and that it was a meeting to review the applications of the architect. So yeah, in terms of the list of attendees at the last meeting with the architect here in the room on the 23rd of January, I have that copy for you. You know, you can actually have that information, and you're absolutely right. There should be transparency. This is a public body, and whatever we do and deliberate in public, you're entitled to that information. So thank you for that. You have another question?
let's do one
I'll
question
go
around and then we'll
yeah.
come back.
Okay.
Okay, so who wants to go next in the room?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
How can the tenants make you the best director ever?
Make me? No,
Yes.
I'm here to serve you. I'm here to hear you. I'm here to serve, basically. And I'm really excited about that ability to be able to do that in a leadership role. To be able to hear your concerns and respond to them appropriately, positively, to create a positive environment. That's my job.
Sue, go
Great
ahead.
answer.
I've got two questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. How do you work with people who have less advantages than you?
How do I work with people that have less advantages to me? I don't, well, I guess I wouldn't come or I wouldn't respond to them from that position that they have a less advantage to me, because, you know, I mean, we're all the same. There's, you know, that wouldn't be my approach to my mindset to respond to them that have less advantages than me. My thing would be to always try to listen and understand what it is that they need, and then determine how I can provide that. So that's the mindset that I would come from.
Okay, thank you. This is, can you tell us about a professional failure that you might have had and what you learned from it?
Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to be humble when you're as great as I am. No. Professional failure. That's a very good question. Yeah, you know, I feel like mistakes are inevitable. You make mistakes. That's how you grow. That's how you learn. The thing is that you don't keep doing that same thing, making that same mistake. I look at mistakes that as a learning curve for me, a learning point for me. I think there was a time when I worked for the school department that I had not given a receipt to a parent that purchased a student planner. And my boss was not happy about that because it was not in keeping with the guidelines of taking money and creating a paper trail. So whenever money exchange between hands, we give that person a receipt immediately.
Mhm.
And then we fill out a whole bunch of paperwork that goes along with that receipt, and that money is then deposited into the bank. And so that was putting it mildly, a mistake that I had learned from. So, there's been other mistakes, but I feel that you have to learn, and sometimes you will make a mistake. But the thing is that you don't keep making that same mistake. You learn from it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else in the room with questions? So online, I don't see anybody's hands up. Hopefully that's, could somebody online put their hand up to make sure we don't have a technical problem here? Just so we know it works. Alpana, I'm gonna pick on you here, you regularly have comments and questions here, and the mic is activated here for you, if you can hear us. I just want to make sure that you have, you need to unmute, but you have a chance to ask a question if you want. But we don't have anything here.
Yeah, shoot, I'll ask another question if you want.
No, I'm gonna go back to questions here. I just want to make sure everybody gets equal time and that we don't have a thing. So I'm gonna ask, actually, I'm gonna just allow all the people online to talk here so they can chime in. And okay, I think that's done. So let's do another round of questions here. Sue, go ahead.
Okay. Why do you want this job?
That's a great question. And I have to tell you, Sue, it's a very surreal experience sitting on this end and looking out at you, because you and I were in the trenches many, many years ago advocating for resident rights. So it's really a good feeling. It's a very good feeling for me to be at this point in my life. I want this job so that I can do a good job at it, at managing the agency, at managing our staff and bringing everybody on board, staff, residents, to a good place, a nice place where the relationships work well. I love administrative work. I like rules. I like to follow rules. I like structure. And I think that if we didn't have the staff that we have, I don't know if I would be as enthusiastic as I am now. Right now, the folks that I work with are absolutely amazing. I mean, I always describe Nada, when I talk about her in the industry, as an asset. Nada is an asset to the agency. She's quite amazing, a quite amazing person. Curtis Rush is here today. He's our housing manager. He's here in support of me, which means a great deal to me. Gary is online also in support and has ensured me that I can call him at any time and he will help walk me through the bidding process and everything. There's a tremendous amount of support among the staff. And I want this community to grow. I want this community to be a beautiful place. I love Needham. I fell in love with Needham many, many years ago. And I came in to fill out an application for housing at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And waited for the office to open. And, you know, it's just a wonderful town to live in. So you shouldn't feel differently when you live in housing. You should feel wonderful about the town and all the resources that the town has to offer. Great school system, beautiful library, you know, just so many things. The people of the town are amazing. They reach out, they help one another, they take care of one another. So I want to be a part of that. I want to continue to be a part of that, and I want to grow that up. I want I want our relationships to improve. And I want people to feel good, like I do, about Needham, whether I live in housing or not. So I want the job to do it well, to do a good job at it. To manage it well.
Thank you. I noticed, go ahead, yes.
What's one of the things, or what's one of the most important things to you that you feel like you would want to see done differently in housing?
Well, I would like us to have our policies organized, lined up and accessible to people. So that's very important to me, that we go through all of that. We develop our admissions and continued occupancy policy, revise that. All of the policies that we are required to do, I want to make sure that those are done and are posted and available to people. I want new programs. I want programming for self-sufficiency. I want programming for more education. I want us to be a high-performing housing agency. That's exactly what I want. Yeah.
Great. I noticed Carol Briggs, who's online, raised her hand. So Carol, we should be able to hear you if you unmute yourself here. I'm going to send you a message saying, asking you to unmute here.
I can call her. I can call her.
Yeah, why don't you call her?
I am. You
Yeah.
know what? Maybe if you want to ask her over the phone.
Yeah, you can ask her and repeat her
Okay.
question here, because
Okay.
for some
We'll
reason
repeat the
it's not unmuting here.
She's not answering. Oh, there she is. There she got it.
I'm sorry, no.
All right, well, if she can text you
No,
the
she's not
question
even
or anything like that, or,
I don't know if she will.
yeah, and maybe, anyway. I'm gonna lower the hand for the moment here, so we don't.
Oh, how's that?
Oh,
there you go.
I am so, well, see, that's how lousy I am at policy. So I need a
sometimes
leader.
Hard to find the button sometimes, so we can hear you. And if you want to go
Okay,
ahead and
now-
ask,
The candidate just addressed policy, and in my own mind, I take it in consideration, the first introductions she put in or someone did in the Needham Housing newsletter we get, her background in education and around the state and around here. And Cheryl's been so receptive to questions I had, garbled obviously as they are. But I personally, and I'd like to see how she, on the record, handle, like I'm interested in the transportation being in Seabed's way. And then I read what the MBTA is doing to bring it up to Needham Heights and grants through the COVID Act that got through the Senate. So could she address that and how we might have more presentations? Probably 3 people will come, but you know, the transportation's hard when you're handicapped or old. I know it's been a long-standing issue.
Thank you, Carol. Can I answer that question about transportation?
Sure. Oh, I can't win in my house. Okay, go.
Yes. Well, transportation is really a issue at Seabed's Way, Captain Robert Cook Drive, and that long St. Mary street. We do have a van. It's actually parked now at Captain Robert Cook Drive by the community room. So we have to determine how we're going to use that. Another thing that we have, Carol, is something called a family self-sufficiency grant. And that grant will allow us to do programming, which one of the things that we will be able to address is transportation activities. I don't want to really say services, but because, you know, it's something that we all will come together and talk about. But we do have the means, and we are moving forward with hearing your concerns. I think it was you at a meeting, or Sue talked about folks that feel sort of isolated, and it would be nice if they could go to Memorial Park if there's an event taking place there, or Powers Hall, or the library, or, you know,
Yeah.
other things. Yeah. So, you know, with our FSS grant and the possibilities, what in terms of programming that we can do, you know, definitely we'll look into how all of that will transpire. And you can nail me to the cross on that one. We're not going to let that go.
Thank you. As I said, a presentation, and now I'm going to answer my question, but be patient. I think that Paul does not have a vendor at the moment for transportation. And you're limited with the Council on Aging to medical and within the town borders, except for Faulkner or something. So it really is an issue for the town and for us in particular. So thank you so much for being on it.
And I do know that the council also provides lift services. Unlimited.
That's what
Okay.
she's talking about.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and
do, but they're
Mhm.
medical.
Okay.
So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Carol. Virgil, go ahead.
Cheryl, I was just thinking about the safety issue.
Mhm.
How would you deal with that, with the residents and their own apartments dealing with mold situation?
Okay.
How would you deal with that situation? Because, I mean, I had a problem with it.
Mhm.
And a lot of other residents have a problem with it. And it haven't been addressed the right way by federal housing.
Mhm.
Because federal housing does have their own rules and regulations, what they're supposed to do.
Mhm.
And they like being ignored. And I'm trying to figure out how are you gonna deal with it?
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry to hear that what happened in your situation isn't resolved the way you would like it to be resolved. I'm really sorry to hear that. I would be of the mindset probably to spend money to find out what's going on behind those walls. I would really want to I've been in a situation where mold occurred during that winter where there was a lot of snow. We had a snowstorm every weekend. And mold is very serious. You have to take things down sometimes to the stud and remove the affected areas. You have to contact people that are an expert in the matter and can test the area as well. And if there is mold, you definitely have to mitigate that. And do whatever it takes to make sure that it doesn't happen again and again. So that's really my mindset. HUD also has grants that that we can apply to that will help us to address mold in public housing. Those grants are being advertised almost daily. And I plan to apply for one of those grants and do more of a study. I don't want people to sort of feel like they're guessing, is it mold or not mold? They should feel comfortable that it's not mold.
Well, from my experience,
Mhm.
I lived up here. Now I'm on the other side of town. And it's the same problem all over.
Yeah,
And got to do with the roofs.
yeah,
And I heard that it was in the newspaper that, oh, you got money to fix the roofs.
yeah.
But none of the roofs have been fixed. And I'm just wondering, because it is very dangerous having mold, and
Exactly.
especially with children.
Yeah.
And even adults and seniors with asthma.
Yeah.
Or COPD,
Yeah.
a respiratory problem,
Mhm.
they'll take them out of here.
Yeah. It's not, it's a very dangerous thing, and HUD is aware of that. And they are communicating with housing authorities on how to better address, how to set up plans to address any issues that they may have to deal with. So you're right. There's a way, there's different levels also of
Yes,
mold,
yeah.
so it depends on the level that exists and how that's being treated and handled. In your situation, I know that was a full mitigation,
It
go down.
compromised my health
Mhm.
where it stopped me from working,
Okay,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, we're in a situation where, it dealt with our health like that, and it's, that's not good.
Mhm.
You gotta pay rent.
Well, I know that Gary's online, and I know that Gary has hired people to but that your unit is safe and that everything has been taken out. And we've done what we can to support making sure that your items were cleaned and processed and stored away from the affected area.
I'm gonna
Well,
jump in and,
Professionally, it wasn't done. But it was done, things were done, professionally it wasn't done right. I mean, when the people were in my house, they threw their dirty gloves on my bed. Which, you know what I'm saying, there's spores on it.
so
It
I'm
don't make
gonna
no sense.
just
I'm
jump
sorry to
in
hear
here
about
so we
that,
can
but-
come back to questions because
All right, go ahead.
and I'm not cutting you off because we haven't done the resident input part of the meeting, which we usually do it first, so there's
No,
a
it's fine.
blend. But let me also say, if you stick around, you will hear that we've got a plan to spend like millions, taking care of the fundamentally basic problems at Seabeds and Cook.
But when,
Hmm?
but when?
And well, it's on the agenda, so stay tuned here. So I'd like to just try to get,
Yeah.
keep it focused on, interviewing our very well qualified candidate for executive director here, because this is a big decision. Any other questions in the room or online from residents and members of the public that are attending? Sue, go ahead.
Cheryl. What do you think is your biggest strength?
What is my biggest strength?
Carl, I'm gonna mute you because we've gotten some background noise there, okay, but if you want to talk again, stick your hand up again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sue. My biggest strength, I think, is my honesty and my work ethic. I work very, very hard and to make a positive difference, to affect a positive change. And it's my passion and, is a strength as well. And my empathy, when Virgil was talking about what was happening in his apartment, and I'm drawn into what's going on, and I feel, bad about it, and knowing what's coming down the road is absolutely better. And I wish I had actually not had to wait for our board chair to bring that up, but so I get drawn in to in a compassionate and an empathetic way to what's happening. And that's my strength, because I want to make a difference. I want to make a positive difference.
Any other questions in the room? Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, this is, I'm asking for your commitment to support the formation of the LTO. It's been on the goals and objectives for years. And the best example of actually pulling off a new election out of nothing is probably, and there was a previous executive director who her strengths were, I don't want to, can I mention her name?
Just by
Right.
that bitch day.
Well, I won't. She had financial strengths. She handled the problem of the snow on the roof at the other development. And she gave the order to the then assistant director, who became executive director, to work with the then social services coordinator, who is now serving in another capacity here. And it was it was like within a couple of months, we had the election up and running, and we had a board in place. It was I guess maybe not technically an LTO, but I'd like your commitment on helping us do it. We just need a little help from the office.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, your voice matter, your voice
Yeah,
counts.
tell me about
And,
that, the importance of an organization like that for you.
Well, for me, as I said, I was the tenant president of Crooksbury Tenants Association during a time of landmark legislation when Quora came into was signed into law by Bill Clinton. And we went everywhere learning about that new legislation. We were trained by HUD, and we taught residents the importance of what this new legislation, how this new legislation would impact their lives and also bring opportunity to their lives. I would have a meeting every month, no matter what. If nobody showed up, I would give out flyers. Sometimes I didn't have people to pass out a flyer, so I would walk around and hand out flyers to every door and post them at the mailbox as well. And be on time for my meeting that on occasion people would not show up for, but we would still have a meeting. So I think in this situation, it really just is a matter of planting the seeds, starting the process. Same thing with Captain Robert Cook Drive and Seabed's Way to ignite interest in the process. As board chair mentioned, there's a lot happening. There's going to be a lot of changes occurring. And we want to make sure that residents are involved in the process. So that means that I have to go, door to door, starting off with meetings in this room, meetings at Seabed's Way, meetings at Captain Robert Cook Drive, and continuing to push that envelope in hopes of generating interest. A lot of it is once you start educating people on what's actually happening, what's coming down the road, that in itself will generate interest, and people will want to come out and learn more about it and be involved in it. So you do have my commitment, Mr. Donald.
Any other questions from anybody? Go ahead.
So you mentioned the self-sufficiency program. Do you have anything in mind already sort of, to expect, for us to expect? That?
Yeah, well, we have to develop an admin plan for that program. And one of the things that I would like to see happening is programs that will help residents. My thing is, addressing poverty. And so my goal would be to help create programs that will move people who are willing out of poverty. So, but that doesn't mean that other programs can't exist as well. But for a long, long time, I have been thinking of a program that I'd like to develop that will break the cycle of poverty for men, women, and children living in public housing through education, entrepreneurship, and home ownership. But I also need to think about programs for elderly and disabled and how those programs will benefit them as well. So we will be very busy. We have to have a plan in place by the end of March. And that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of reaching out to people and a lot of talking to residents and coming up with something that we can grow from. It won't be perfect, but we will learn and we will grow and we will move forward.
Any more questions? Any questions?
And I just want to add to that, I know that Carol Bird Briggs had mentioned transportation, so that also is a great opportunity to bring some of those activities into the FSS program. So, that's, thank you, Carol, for opening that door.
So, Virgil, go ahead.
I'm just curious, I've just started this here. Yeah, younger youth that are, in high school. I mean, okay, it's a housing project. Parents don't really have the money to send them to college. So, I was thinking about a program for them.
Yeah.
To help them out, to see success.
Yeah.
In
So,
the corporate world.
yeah. So when I lived at Captain Robert Cook Drive, I developed along with other mothers, a homework program called Countdown to Success. We applied for a grant through the local church and Newton Congregational, and we received $10,000 to start that program. We brought tutors in from the high school to help students. We had 5 seniors at that time from the high school involved in the program, and we helped them to get the training they needed to pass admissions tests. We gave them financial aid workshops, tutoring, and all 5 of those seniors graduated from high school and went on to college, except for 1 actually. And then we also had a mentoring program, and that we applied to the church again. They gave us $50,000 to start a mentoring program that ran out of the high school. And that program mentors students from the 9th grade to the 12th. They help them with tutoring and SAT prep, financial aid workshops, everything to get them to college. That program is in existence today. It's called Needham Steps Up. And it has been taken over by a group of wonderful people in the town of Needham that fundraise for that program and keep it going in the high school. I think it's more than 10 years old now. So that program continues. So that's a huge thing for me, is because Needham Public Schools is such a great school system, and it's so important that our kids take advantage or have the ability to take advantage of what the school system offers and move on. I also want to add that Penny, our Commissioner Kirk, has also did amazing things with families, and at Captain Robert Tribe, and I think other at High Rock as well, helping those children get into schools that have changed their lives. They've gotten into private schools and have succeeded and have gone on and are very successful. So education, in my mind, is the key. It's one of those tools you need to break that cycle of poverty through education, entrepreneurship, homeownership. So that's another one of my passions. Yeah.
So I'm gonna look at online again. If anybody has additional questions, please raise your hand. After we finish with all the resident and public questions, we'll go to commissioner questions, next part of the interview here. I don't see any hands raised here. How about in the room? Any final questions from anybody for now? I see none, so let's go to commissioner questions, and I don't think there's any particular order of interviewing, so does anybody want to volunteer to go first amongst the commissioners? Or Janice here? I guess I've got a volunteer on my left here, so go ahead, Eleanor.
So Cheryl, you've been in the Assistant Executive Director position for about a year now. And I'm just curious, from being in that role and seeing the role of Executive Director, what you would say you think will be the biggest challenge for you taking on that position?
That's a great question. And honestly, I'm doing a lot of the duties that an executive director would do. I manage our ELOC's system and DHCD's reporting systems, and making sure that the train is running on time, making sure that reporting is taking place.
Most people don't know what the ELOC system is until they get to be chairman, and then
It's a, I'm gonna just refer to my notes because I don't want to say it wrong, but it's an it's
it's an acronym.
it's an acronym. It's ELOCC. I'm saying ELOCCS. It's a let me just tell you exactly what it is. I'm apologizing. It's the electronic line of credit control. So our subsidy is that we receive from HUD is in locks, in ELOCs, and we draw that subsidy down on a monthly basis, our operating subsidy. Our capital fund subsidy is also in the ELOCs as well, and we draw that money down for our capital projects. I also have access to DHCD's quarterly, annual, and monthly reports. I have access to the budget that is in ELOCs and I'm sorry, and DHCD's reporting mechanism. So a challenge, I think, would be not so much with the administrative duties, but just to make sure that I don't misstep when I make decisions about what happens to residents and how I'm addressing residents. Like, for example, Virgil had said, what would you do in that situation? There are, not everyone is happy about their living circumstances and what is happening in housing. So that will be a challenge for me because, I have to make sure that I'm following our guidelines and also paying attention to the human factor as well. So I just want to make sure that I get that side correct. The administrative piece is easy enough to learn, understand, and operate in it. The human side is to be mindful and careful about how you proceed with that. So that that would be my challenge because I want to make sure I do that right. I handle that in the right way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You can keep
it's
asking
okay.
questions and or
It's
we
okay, we
can
can
rotate down the road. Down the table, Penny or Ed or Janice, do you want to go next? Whichever.
Janice, do you want to go?
She's on mute.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am
Go
I
ahead,
good?
Janice. You're good.
Yeah.
Hi, Cheryl.
Janice?
I'd like to ask you, how would you handle a difficult client or a difficult resident in your many dealings?
In my many dealings, how would I handle that? Well, one of the things that I would try to do is to calm the situation. And try to understand what's happening with the concern that they're having. Let's see. I definitely want to be helpful to that person, but mainly try to calm the situation, find out what's actually happening. We had a situation here not too long ago where I intervened on a resident who was asking questions. And I wanted to interrupt her so that other people can have an opportunity to talk. And in this situation, what I had to do was sort of sit with her, look her in the eye and face to face and talk in a calm way to convince her that we do need to let other people have a chance to express themselves. And to do that in a calm manner. And to assure her that we would come back to her concern, but that we would also give another person an opportunity to talk. I think it's really dealing with that person in a calm way, understanding the issues that are involved and expressing myself in a manner that they can understand. I hope that's helpful. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, and thank you for also adding in there to being able to communicate with the resident on their level, Cheryl. That was a great comeback. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Janice.
Anything else, Janice, or shall we keep passing the baton down the table here?
I'm good. Thank you.
And we'll come back to everybody if you think of, somebody thinks some more questions. So go ahead, Penny.
This may be a little bit redundant, because in a way it's been asked, but I know that almost everything is a high priority.
Mhm.
But if you were to choose one thing, I think I'm gonna know what the answer is. What's the highest priority of all the issues that are presented to you?
Well, that's a great question. All of the questions are great. That's a great question, Penny. And this week has been a very busy week. With not having Steve there and having to move things forward. And so having to prioritize things that are of a high level. So this week was, or even last week, was getting the board packet out. Priority number one. The board is, they have a meeting coming out there. So working on focusing on that item and also doing other things. Knowing how to prioritize is extremely important. Knowing what to put forward first. Sometimes issues might come up where you have to stop everything and deal with that. and then get back onto your priority list. You have to know too, who will be most affected by that priority list. The board has work to do and they need the information, and we have to get that out. Luckily, we didn't have someone come into the office and say, I hate living here and I don't want to live here. And if you don't deal with me right now, I'm going to fall apart. We did. And if that had happened, then that's a priority. You deal with that and, you address it and then you go back to your list. So I think one of my strengths is that I do have an ability to prioritize things, because a lot of things have come at me within these last 3 weeks. I have had to deal with a lot of things. The good news is that we have a phenomenal staff. So, they are amazing in keeping the train moving forward. So we really haven't had anything in terms of managerial wise that would cause a breakdown of communications or something that needed to be addressed immediately. Everyone works well together. We all know what our roles are and we do it. So this was a busy week. I had trainings and meetings and Zoom meetings and so forth. Making sure that asking myself, what is the highest priority right now, and addressing that. And I think I do that pretty well.
Do you want any follow-up questions there, Penny, or
No,
that's
that's
good?
pretty all encompassing, really.
Ed, I think you're up.
Okay. Cheryl, what resources would you use if you encountered something you did not know?
That's a great question. And what I do is, you would do your research. So one of the things that I do a lot of is I take meeting minutes for different boards. And a lot of times people will talk in a very general sense about something, and I will have no idea what they're talking about. And so you have to research. You have to do the research. You find out, where they'll, if they have an acronym of a name of something that they're using, you look that up. I do a lot of research on the computer. In terms of the Housing Authority, we had to submit an annual report one year, and I contacted the person who requested the report and got a specific information on what was needed for that report. I ran it by our executive director as well as our board chair so that I could fully understand how to put things together. I engaged them in the process, and we were able to submit a full report to that requester. So, it's really just a matter of reading, researching, finding the information to make an informed decision, asking people who are in it, how have they done it, how they could help if I needed to do that. But doing a lot of research and finding out the details of what's needed and moving forward, always moving forward.
Thank you. Now, do you get any support or do you have access to support and information from both DHCD and from HUD?
I think both DHCD and HUD is, they are very supportive. They're not proactive. You have to know the questions to ask, and they will give you the information that you need. We have housing specialist, her name is Caitlin Johnson, and she is very supportive to me. And I feel very comfortable with asking questions and being honest that I don't know. And she appreciates that, and she gives me the information or leads me in the direction to get the information I need to move the issue forward. Likewise, with our capital program, we have a gentleman who gives me a great deal of information on how to move the capital program forward. And I feel that DHCD is phenomenal in the type of support that they provide housing agencies or local housing authorities. So they have a great deal of staff that can help in all levels. But you also have to be proactive. You have to get a guidebook or other information and look at it and understand it and then ask the questions. How does this, I'm almost there, but I'm missing a piece. How do I get to point B? I'm at point A now, I need to move forward. So there is a lot of support there. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of training. Since I've been at the Housing Authority, I've taken the Public Housing Manager training with Nan McKay. I've taken the public housing training with Mass Narrow. I've attended budget training workshops, capital fund training workshops. I've done a quarry training. There's a lot to learn and a lot to do. And I love the fact that there's so much to learn and you have the ability to do it as long as you have a desire to want to learn and grow. So there is a lot out there to support executive directors. There's a group of executive directors that meet monthly to support each other. So, and everyone wants to see you succeed. So if I wanted to tweak something or understand something better, I have a resource of people that I can call on and say, how did you do that? How did it work out for you? But I'm always going to go to a guidebook, I'm going to go to a regulation. I'm going to go to a law, a statute, and make sure that I'm doing it correctly.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else, Sen?
No, that was pretty informative.
So I'll weigh in here, Cheryl, and thank you for being so patient with all of us here. I know it's quite an experience to do something like this. Most of us, I think everybody who's ever been employed, I just want to state for the record, usually has their interviews with their employer, in a closed door office here, and this is required by the open meeting law. So there's complete transparency about everything, but it's amazing, when you realize that we're doing things that are normally done, as at least with a modicum of privacy here. So I really appreciate your putting up with it.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you to maybe go into a little bit more about your experience as a commissioner. You have a commissioner for how long were you?
13 years.
13 years. And I know I overlapped with you for a couple of years. I know that you mentored me as a newbie commissioner for a couple of years when I was trying to figure out this upside down world that we all live in here with the housing authorities. But I also know you were involved in the normal cycle of things every year, and there were many things that happened before I arrived on the scene. I think we overlapped 2 or 3 years, so that, for 10 years before then. What about those experiences as a commissioner do you think make you add to your qualifications to move over to an executive director role?
Thank you. Yeah, as a commissioner, I learned so much more. There was more about running the agency that I was exposed to. We had the annual budgets that we had to understand, vote on. We hired executive directors. I'm here on the side of the table now, and we've hired executive directors. We we started I'm sort of going all over the place with this, but one of the biggest things for me that was a very important part of my growth was when we were considering redeveloping High Rock homes. You know, I was always of the mindset that why not Needham? You know, Needham can be an affordable town. And so being involved in that process of tearing down 40 units and or 20 units and building 40 was an incredible experience. We worked with Margaret Moran during that time, and I learned so much about that process. And here we are about to do it again with the Preservation and Redevelopment Initiative. So during that time, I learned a great deal of development, of what's involved with the development process, money aspect of it, meeting with attorneys, making sure that our language was correct and that we had the best interests of the housing authority at stake in our paperwork. So that was a huge thing for me because I wanted that to happen. I wanted affordability to increase in Needham. Let's see, I'm probably leaving a whole lot of things out, but it was just a great experience of working as a commissioner, because that was the deep dirty of managing the agency. You learned so much at that level, what goes into managing an agency. You know, of course, my passion is for residents, but there are a lot of administrative pieces that have to be in place. We are accountable to HUD and to DHCD. You know, we're accountable for the dollars that we spend. So there was just a lot involved with hiring staff and making sure that our policies were aligned with the goal that we had set for ourselves as an agency. So it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. There were a lot of meetings, a lot of late night meetings. Peter Pinkertor was a chair at the time. Peter Pinkertor is now the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. But in our meetings as commissioners, we didn't adjourn sometimes until midnight. I mean, we were working. So I'm probably just leaving a lot of things out, but it was an eye opener on how the agency operates, how you manage people, how you manage residents, how you manage your properties, and how you are accountable to HUD and to DHCD for what you do. And the auditors will audit your program and make sure you're doing it correctly. So,
Great answer. Thank you so much. I will now maybe go down the row again here, and Eleanor, you're up next. Do you have any follow-on questions?
Yeah. So could you talk a bit about your experience in supervising other people?
yes, I've done that quite a bit during my life. My experience always is to treat people well. I have to have a clear understanding of what their roles are and what their responsibility is. And I have an expectation that they will operate in what they're expected to do. So my mindset always is to be kind to the people that I'm supervising. Making sure that the work that they're doing is getting done. When I worked at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, I had graduate students that I had to supervise in doctoral programs. And, you know, I had a high respect for them because they were going to work during the day and coming into a very rigorous program at night. So my my approach to them was that that I would not be sort of an overseer, but that I would encourage them and show them my appreciation for what they do. When I worked for the school department, we had to train staff on accounting procedures and principles. And always do that in a patient way, recognizing that everyone's style of communication is different from mine. Listen well, knowing what the expectation is for their role, and in ensuring myself that it's getting done and that they're doing the best, they're being their best self in the role. So always trying to encourage that, always trying to encourage a desire to want to do more and to do great at it, and to give people an opportunity to grow and to challenge them. So the school department was a big challenge because not everybody knows accounting procedures. And so it's difficult to explain to people what you have to do and why. And oftentimes I would go to a school and just sit down with that secretary and say, this is how you do it, if they were just stuck and not knowing how to move forward. But making sure that they have the tools that they need to move forward in their job. I think that is my point. I think that I'm trying to make is to making sure that they have the tools that they need to move forward in the work that they're doing, and then to be available to them should they have questions about where they're stuck or what's not working for them.
Great, thank you.
Great. Anything else, Helma?
No.
Janice, you're up next in the rotation here. You're on mute. If you have additional questions for Cheryl.
I don't really have any additional questions at this time, Reg.
Yeah, great. Then we'll move on to Penny. I think you were next up here.
That was my most important question.
Okay, so no further questions. How about Ed, yourself?
I have a list of 20 questions here. In front of me. And I have to say that the questions that have been asked and the answers given satisfy every one of these 20 questions. So I don't have anything else to add.
Right.
All right, well, I think that we're getting toward the end. Actually, Eleanor can see I've been crossing off things that people have already asked about as well as we go along. I actually have one left over though.
Okay.
That I'd like to get into. It was touched on a little bit before, but I'd like to, over your years of being a tenant, being a commissioner, and now you've had a year, plus or minus a day or two of being a, assistant executive director. Can you talk more about resident services? Residents, there's a resident services director.
Yeah.
But getting a good person on board is, I've come to learn, is only the first baby step
That's right.
of basically facilitating resident services for our population, and our population is one that often has a hard time getting, the kind of support that they need as they face all the normal challenges that everybody faces in life.
That's right.
Tell me, can you talk more about how your background and your, would help you manage that part of being an executive director and make it, a thing of beauty?
Yeah, of course, I bring to the table my experience as a resident and commissioner and living in the town of Needham. But, when we were interviewing Laurie Blake for the resident service position, I knew we had several interviews of potential candidates, but I knew that Laurie would be a great fit for our population. based on her personality. And you can't really describe the personality or illustrate the personality. You have to know that that's going to work, that that's going to be a good fit based on your experiences, your past experiences, and what you know about the population that you currently serve. So we now have to move forward and hire a FSS coordinator. And so that person will come to the table, if, you know, with a Harvard degree, and be pretty efficient at what they know. But will they be able to motivate and relate to our community? And that's what's important, to be able to know that, understand that, and you know, narrow in on making that right fit. So it just brings everything to the table, Reg, everything that I've learned and lived in Needham, knowing what our residents like, what they want, what they desire, and understanding that. And then looking for those qualities in that candidate. We had Dio Cohen was a resident service coordinator before Penny. And Yael's was great at what she did, but we had to bring her up to understanding that we are the customer. We want this the way we want this. It's not that you feel what's best for us. We know. And so you have to learn how to listen to that and then move in that direction. That's going to be your success. Not what you think is best, but what you hear from your community, your population, what they need. And finding the right person to be able to do that is what's important. Now, with Lori, I didn't know Lori from Eve, but when she came into the office and started talking, I knew she would be a fit, I was very excited about her. And she can relate to our residents. She goes out, walking the pavement, talking, knocking on doors, talking to people, and bringing issues forward that she believes that they would like. She has a calendar now of a lot of different types of activities, and she's a great listener, and she has empathy and compassion. So it's, you know, I think my past experiences of having moved to Needham Housing Authority from the greater Boston area of Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, also gives me more insight into what our population needs and how that can be improved, and how that person would be a benefit. That's important to me, that person would be a benefit to our residents and not just be cold into the book, you know, a book, you know, this is how you do it, A, B, and C, but to understand the human side of what it means to live in public housing.
Great, thank you. Great, good answer. So, that's it. I had a list of a few questions, like Ed, maybe not 20, but more, you know, but I've been crossing them off. Did somebody, Virgil, yeah, we'll do one more round, see if there's anything we've overlooked asking, and then we'll close off this part of it, the interview, and we'll go into the discussion part. So go ahead, Virgil.
There's one thing we all miss, and people who are challenged, you know, mentally challenged, you know, no one ever spoke about them, you know, and how would you deal with that situation as a resident?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Yes.
Because we do have them and stuff like that, and there's some that are physical, and there's some a lot of them mental.
Yeah, yeah. And that's extremely important to me that physical and intellectual, mental disabilities are addressed. When I was a resident, I had the pleasure of working as a case manager for a resident at Seabed's Way. She's passed away, so I think it's okay to say her name. Her first name was Frida, and then there was Carolyn Ack. And these two women were phenomenal. They were mentally challenged, but they had a routine that worked. And I was in their lives to help facilitate their daily routine. So it's really important to me that, you know, if we all, you know, there are folks that are dealing with depression. There are folks that are dealing with, you know, loss. We want to make sure that they're not ignored, that they're not isolated, that they're not hidden, that they don't become invisible. You know, and so we fortunately now have the tools that we can use to address some of those concerns. We have a Ross grant, and our Ross grant will hire a qualified social worker, mental health counselor, that will make sure that our residents are getting the services that they need. Yeah. And I'm already thinking about ways to go in about how we can, you know, make that
That's the
happen.
thing, yes.
Partnering with universities and that kind of thing on graduate students that may be able to come in and help assist us with this.
That's the main thing that mentioned, isolation.
Isolation, right?
You
Yeah.
know, because there are a lot of people that will try to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And they're not communicating with
Exactly.
nobody in the community.
Yeah.
That's all I see is the ambulance come in the parking lot and.
Yeah.
You know, they're gone.
Right, yeah. So we don't want that. I
No,
don't
we
want that. I want to make sure that everyone is well taken care of, that their needs are met. And that they have more.
So thanks, Virgil. Does anybody else have one more question? And then we'll go ahead, Sue.
Along the same lines as what Virgil said, what do you do about, what would you do with a person up in the senior development if they have a mental health issue due to addiction and the, you know, mood swings and potential violence towards their elderly neighbor?
Yeah. Well, there are guidelines on how to, you know, ensure the peaceable enjoyment of the community. But you definitely want to make sure that that person gets the services that they need. And it's difficult because some people may, you know, I don't want help. I want to live like this. I want to do what I have to do. So we would definitely partner with we would definitely be in touch with our community partners to advise us and that they are aware also of what's happening in this situation. But there are HUD guidelines and DHCD guidelines on how to ensure that everyone is safe in the community when someone is engaging in behavior that's not safe. I don't want to go into too much detail about that, but yeah, my main concern is that, you know, there's an issue, a health issue for that person that needs to be paid attention to. And I'm not a mental health counselor, but I do know who they are in this community. And I have reached out to them on occasion and know that they're partners with us in this regard. Again, the good thing now that we have is the Ross grant, because now we can bring things qualified. I don't want to say qualified person, but people that know that community and know how to work with them and to make sure that they have the services that they need to function.
Great, thanks, Sue.
And be successful.
Anybody else in the room with one last question? How about online? I don't see any hands up, so I'm gonna assume that if there was one last major question we may have overlooked, then the hand would be up. So thank you so much, Cheryl.
Well,
You can
thank
take a
you.
breath.
Hey, thank you for letting me talk and go on and on.
We
Thank
support
you.
you.
If you want to move back down to the end of the table, I think that would be okay. I think it was excellent that you were sitting there because, we means you were loud and clear on the speakerphone there, and that's great. And you were front and center in the owl windows that you get here, so that was good, so.
Thank you very much. Ed.
So I've got a sort of a agenda to go through here that is.
Well, Reg, I would move that we recommend that the board vote.
Hang on a minute. I'm not taking agenda, motions yet. Let me just have patience here. We have to do things, tick the boxes for DHCD here, so give me a moment, okay? Couple moments. So, I will recognize a motion when we get there, okay? Speaking of motions, though, even if it's Janice to make it, I would like to turn to our esteemed chair. We're gonna have a little bit of a complex motion that we need to make that contains several elements to it. And if you wouldn't mind sort of taking notes as you go along, so we get it worded correctly, properly. I didn't, I thought about trying to craft it in advance, but didn't, so. But then Janice, you can make the motion if you want, but it has to contain certain elements that is required by DHCD here, so. I just want to say that what we have just completed here is section number 11 of the guidelines of public notice, housing notice 2021-03, which basically is the guidelines for the entire hiring process that you go through for a executive director. And the board members have had that distributed to them several times over the last few months, and including earlier this week. The board also has in the I'd say 30 or 40 page report from the executive search committee, a matrix showing how the recommended candidates meet DHCD's qualifications. We also have a letter of recommendation from the search committee that recommended that we interview Cheryl Gosman and two other candidates that dropped out before we could the board could interview them. The board has received the applications and the resumes of all the candidates that were considered by the search committee, which they received them actually a month or two ago, as well as again this week. Also the search committee scored and ranked the candidates, and the board received that in advance of this meeting. We also received the recommendation from the local tenant organization, the Cooksbridge Tenants Organization, which is our only currently active one, but hopefully we'll have, when going again here at Linden Chambers and other of our properties here. There has been reference checks reports. There's still one or two more reference check reports that need to be done since we made our decision last Saturday, and they just haven't been completed. But the advantage, I think everybody around this table and around the meeting is that, Cheryl is not an unknown candidate from, Timbuktu or New York State. It's she's obviously a very well-known person here. We've also, she's been Corey checked, and that, no surprise, no issues there, but that's a requirement. The executive director salary calculation worksheet, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a minute, has been distributed to the board in advance. And also the contract, there's an employment agreement, which is pretty much most of the terms dictated by DHC. That's been distributed to the board, and we need to talk tonight about terms that we can make a decision about the most important, which is salary. So all these requirements for section 11 of this PHN 2021-03, I think have been complied with subsequently here. We've got a checklist here, guys. So bear with me here. So at this point, we're going to have a discussion, Janice, before we take the motion of whether or not to offer, employment to Cheryl as our executive director. And then we're also, before we have the motion, Janice, we have to talk about those key terms, variable terms of employment. And like I said, most of them are dictated by the contract that everybody got. But there are a few terms that we need to discuss. So when I say dictated, vacation, benefits, how many hours constitutes full-time work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And besides salary, there's a section here about other taxable compensation, including non-monetary compensation such as laptops, cell phones, et cetera, as well as non-salary monetary compensation such as bonus. So we need to talk about that. And if we make any decisions there, build that into a motion. That's it. There's also one more topic I want to bring up for when we do the discussion, which is there's been in 2 or 3 meetings we've had before, in public, mention that should the candidate be Cheryl, that the board might want to consider continuing the kind of coaching or mentoring or support system into her second and maybe third year that Cheryl's been benefiting from in this year that we've spent with Steve Merritt. So that's something else for us to discuss and vote upon, I think, tonight as well. And I think that, I don't want to prejudge any of the discussion, but I just wanted to tee all those things up. I'm going to go over the fixed terms. The contract, the guidelines say that new executive directors who have not been an executive director before can only be offered a 1-year term of employment, a 1-year employment contract. And again, it's these multiple 10 pages of 11, 12 pages here. But that year has to end at the end of a fiscal year of the LHA. So our fiscal year ends December 31st. And then if it turns out that the fiscal year is shorter than 1 year, then you extend it to the number of months that it would have it end on a fiscal year. So if we extend an offer of employment, let's say that takes effect, it has to take effect not earlier than 60 days from when we get the packet in. The HCD gives themselves 60 days to respond to the packet of, that has to be sent into them for approval. So it's 60 days from sometime next week when we get this all pulled together. And then so 1 year and 10 or 9 months from there would be the term. It would go basically to December 31st, 2024.
Wait, can you back up there a minute, Reg?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's gonna take them till the end of 2024.
No. They give themselves 60 days. So we send in like a 1-inch thick packet of all these materials we've already received. And the board vote and the minutes, the minutes have to be written up. So Penny's
Yeah,
on
the whole
record.
packet. Okay, go
Yeah.
on from there.
Yeah, all right, great. So no, not, God help us, don't say that. Any other program activities that Cheryl, the executive director, may manage. So there's High Rock Homes LLC, for example. The required hours per week must be 37.5 hours per week. That's considered full-time for a housing authority, the salary, which we'll get back to. Also, you have to, we're voting on the percentage share that the state picks up versus the feds, which is already determined, and it's 45.2% for the state. And that's, for example, that was what was in Angie's contract. And then the other taxable compensation, can be nothing. But things like a personal cell phone or car that you take home or something like that would be taxable compensation. So, the motion that we have to pass either acknowledges something like a cell phone. For example, Angie's contract had a cell phone provision in it. And those are sort of the moving parts, the biggest one of which is salary here. Any questions before I get to salary?
What about vacation?
Vacation set, and benefits like sick pay and number of sick hours and all that is all preordained here. Any other questions? Okay, so, I thought I'd put together some data for everybody, for the board members here. I'm sorry, Janice, you're not here, and I didn't anticipate that you weren't going to be here, so I'm
Yeah,
Not-
me neither.
prepared to do it. But if you could listen in and maybe just take some mental notes or actual notes, and I will get this packet to you afterward here. Yeah, it's an extra one for Janice there, so give me Janice's back and all. So, I attached a physical copy of the salary spreadsheet, calculation spreadsheet from DHCD that you already received earlier this week and earlier this year. The key thing, basically, they have a formula. This is all, works. You put numbers in on how many units we have, et cetera. And out pops the answer that you cannot pay for our LHA more than $102,483 per year as a maximum salary. That's it. Doesn't matter who you're hiring. In fact, the candidate that that was on again, off again, that I mentioned briefly, was a much more senior person. And what caused him to be off again is that he would have to take a $50,000 salary cut, to come and work for us. So, it's, but they're very, very firm about not deviating from this whatsoever as a maximum salary. So do this in the order that I put them. And that's number one exhibit. Number two is there's a whole 25-page guidance on salary, and I just excerpted the key page. This one looks like this, here, the second one in your packet here. And this basically shows the sort of the range of salaries from low to high for the size LHA that we are. So I've yellow highlighted the line that applies to us in this table here. And again, this is all totally by formula. There's no judgment allowed whatsoever. It doesn't matter how many years of experience or little years of experience you have, or how badly you need the person, or how tough it is out there to find a candidate. You can't vary from this. So that's data point number two. This third page here, it looks like this. This is an excerpt from the Needham housing plan that was just approved last month by the planning board and the select board and sent to the state. So that's page 9, and it shows what the AMI is for our area median income. And I've yellow highlighted the one person, if you're a single person, and the 2021, average income in our area is $84,560,000 per year. In 2021, And 2022, which is the latest data, i.e. last year that has been, published, is it jumped to $98,140. So that's what the average person living in a one-person household earns in our area, which is, from my point of view, an amazingly large number, given the number of years I've lived, but it's a reality of how expensive it is to live in our area. And I would just note, obviously, that, again, for the record, that Cheryl does in fact live right here in Needham, which is, I think a great plus from the point of view of everybody who's been doing the interviewing. The fourth handout here looks like this. This is our 2023 budget page that we just approved, one page out of the budget with the salary levels for our various, staff personnel. And so this is the approved budget that's gone into DHCD. We have not yet got the approval back from DHCD. Unless something's changed, Cheryl, since the last time I talked to you. No, we haven't
gotten.
we got it back. So this shows what the current salary, annual salary is for Cheryl. And it shows what the proposed 2023 annual salary is for Cheryl as an assistant executive director. And it also shows what we have in the budget for the, we have budgeted for the executive director position. But, anticipating that the search would turn somebody up that we would wind up hiring. And just as a placeholder, we put in the maximum allowable. And if you ask me why it's slightly different than what the spreadsheet produces, I do not have an answer for that. I think it might be the 3 additional housing choice vouchers. We got, we had 120 and it went up to 123, and that would have pinged the spreadsheet to be a little bit more than what's in here. All right, the next 2 pieces of data that I retrieved is, this one is the first page of Angie's contract when we hired her in 2018, I guess, 2019. And what, what our offer was to her back then. Of course, there's been a bit of inflation since then, or quite a bit of inflation since then. But I just thought that was, again, another data point that would be useful for the board to have. And then we have the last page in your packet is the most recent renewal that we did with Angie. It was a 3-year contract. It was after her first year. We did another first year in 9 months. We did a 3-year from start January 1, 2021 to January 1, 2023. So if you look at these 2 pages, you can see what Angie was being paid on December 30th, 2021. And then what 2020 it would be, and then what we increased her salary to in on January 1st, 2021. We don't have a compensation study, by the way. And one of the things I've learned, if I can look through Eleanor's head for a second down the row at the board. One of the things I've learned in the last couple of months from talking to particularly from on the federal side, is that many boards do a compensation study that covers not only the executive director, but also other positions. Like, for example, we lost Gary Kupal. Gary's still there, but I'm sorry to share this. But Gary, Gary's got many benefits from living closer to where he lives, but he also was able to make more money, substantially, materially more. And the reason for doing a compensation study would be to actually kind of look what's going on and maybe put some more realistic numbers in our next year's budget if we think we're losing people because they're being, we're not paying competitive compensation. That's something I'll bring up, not tonight, but I just want to mention in passing. It was part of my learnings as we went through this difficult process where we couldn't get 3 candidates to interview, they kept dropping out, so. And that's one of the solutions that was offered by our Caitlin Johnson, our federal contact person here, so. So I think that I want to open the floor. If the sense of the board, first of all, I'll say, is it the sense of the board that we should extend an employment offer based on the interview we did? And I'd just like to everybody get a chance to weigh in and then go to the discussion of what level of salary we might want to offer, because we actually have to have that in our resolution tonight in order to be able to go forward next week here with all the bureaucratic stuff we need to do. Does anybody want to go first in terms of a sense of the board? And we'll get
Yes,
to the
I do.
resolution. Go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, I already tried to make a motion and, I
No
just want to
motion, a
revert,
sense of
I
the
just want,
board.
listen to me. I just want to revert back a little bit to the maintenance program. It I don't want to use bad language, but it's really depleted. It's like nothing. And we need to rev that up. We need to rev up the money. We need to offer them a comprehensive livable wage, which we're not doing. So there's that. And as far as the executive director wage, that needs to be increased. I mean, let's all face the fact, inflation is ridiculous. And God, I live in public housing, fixed income. Nobody faces that more than the people that live in public housing, especially the seniors. So, yeah, let's look at that very objectively going forward.
Great. And I assume the sense of is that we definitely should make that a priority, that kind of the compensation study is what you're saying here, and then fight for the right wages, so that we can be competitive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your sense, I heard you say the sense is definitely that we should craft a resolution that ticks all the boxes and I'll make an offer of employment to Cheryl.
Yep.
That's yep. Anybody, I'd like to ask everybody to make a comment, all the commissioners down the road here at this point on that. Go ahead, Ed.
In your checklist of 8 items that we should have prepared for this meeting tonight, you mentioned a matrix of
Yes.
reasons why or she's qualified.
Yes.
And a week ago, I sent out a document with the typical open meeting law characterization that it was to be discussed at a future meeting.
Mhm.
And that wasn't mentioned, but
And I overlooked that, so
That's-
would you mind if you bringing it up? Please do. Yes,
okay, so
my apologies.
you want me to go through it or?
I'd summarize it,
Well-
maybe, yeah, or go through it, whichever you
There's
think.
there's a lot of data there, but Cheryl certainly, in my opinion, more than meets the minimum qualifications. And one of the key issues, of course, is the 2 professional training programs for management of a housing authority. And I don't know if have you completed either one of them yet, Janet? Cheryl?
I've taken the courses and I'm going to take the exam by the shortly. So I've completed the
Yeah,
course.
no, I got it.
And then
You
the
gotta
next
take the
step
exam
is
when?
the exam will be taken within a week.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Because I had indicated in that document that she anticipated completing both of those courses by the end of February.
Mhm.
And that is certainly an important key. She would have had a year, if having been hired, she would have had a year to complete them, and she will have completed them in advance. I urge the board to recommend that we go forward and offer the job to Cheryl and submit our required application to DHCD.
Okay, I actually knew about the courses here, which is, I'm glad that somebody asked about that earlier. I noticed it wasn't in Cheryl's resume. I had Cheryl update her resume for this meeting, but they weren't in there. Would it be okay with the board if there are any sort of omissions from her resume, which needs to be submitted to DHCD next week, that we put that in particular?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes,
Okay, Penny or Eleanor? Go ahead, Penny.
Um, I would say that, aside from all of the things that Cheryl has accomplished in this last year, the fact that she came into this situation or this position with so much more experience than any of our other directors have had in terms of being a resident, a commissioner, having leadership roles in all of those and over a period of many years. And she certainly has demonstrated a tremendous amount of dedication to the housing authority. And I can understand it, having worked for the housing authority, you get so involved and you get really attached to it. And I'm a small example compared to Cheryl, who's had many more years of that involvement and personal experience. That plus her other town positions where her abilities to communicate and relate are, quite obvious and proven. I have not seen the recommendation written by Dan Gudikantz, but the fact that the superintendent of schools actually asked to be allowed to write a recommendation does a great deal to me. So that plus so many other things, just knowing Cheryl personally, that she's the right kind of person for this job, I think. So I would say yes to it.
Go ahead, Ed.
Two other things I forgot to mention before. We've had 7 different executive directors in the last 15 years of the Needham Housing Authority. So our residents have not had the opportunity to get a quality from consistent management. And Cheryl being the epitome of what public housing was created for, having lived here, having worked hard enough to get 2 children through college, one of which went through law school, and to raise herself out of living in public housing to the level that she has accomplished just speaks unlimited words of congratulations and admiration. And I just want to add that to what I said a minute ago.
I think that's great. We're creating the record that's going to be going in. So, anybody who thinks of an additional point like that, I think, please interrupt when you do. Eleanor, do you have a thought or sense?
Well, I agree that we should extend an offer to Cheryl for all the reasons that have been mentioned. And then I also want to point out that another bit of experience that Cheryl had, which is how I met her, which was being on the board of Needham Opportunities, Inc., which was an organization that was committed to helping develop affordable housing in Needham, and also was instrumental in helping with High Rock Homes. And she was on the board of that organization, as well as the many other organizations and involvement that she's mentioned here tonight.
So to my ears, that would be another thing we should have Cheryl work on adding to her resume.
I think it's on the
Oh, it is?
yeah.
Okay, great.
Add to it.
Great. I also concur with what I've heard here. I think this has been an interesting process for me, even though I have known Cheryl less years than some of the other people at the table. I did overlap with her quite a bit, and I've learned a lot about her qualifications and background. It's not your standard path and certainly DHCD looks forward to, doing things on a very standardized way, because they got a wide herd over 200 plus local housing authorities. But I think she has demonstrated her qualifications for the job, and I support extending an offer as well. And so that brings.
something to
Yes.
say.
No, go ahead and go ahead, Janice.
Reg, I would like a commitment from you.
Mhm.
If Cheryl is the candidate and Cheryl is the ED, I'd like a commitment from you that you're gonna be willing to do your best and work with her to the best of your abilities.
I make that commitment in public tonight, and I've already mentioned it in private to Cheryl. I think, and I would also invite everybody to have that commitment. I think that my experience with many nonprofit boards is that they, besides hiring the executive director, they're there to support the executive director or the, head of school or whoever it happens to be, and help be part of the team to make the overall management and governance of the organization better. I absolutely support what you say, Janice.
Thank you. She, after all, she is, to your words, the illustrious Cheryl Gosman.
I don't know if I can spell that word at this time. I'll let that be there. I know Penny's gonna write it down and it will
Oh,
be
yeah.
spelled correctly. Okay, so I think that brings us to the salary question. If you take out the sheet that here shows what she's making right now, which is $75,000 a year, and that was last year actually, and assuming that DHCD is going to approve it, the what is a 5% increase, so that's definitely falling behind from an inflation point of view. We all know that from what's happened this year, but they're going to approve a $78,750 as the assistant executive director. Does anybody have any thoughts?
No,
clearly
show her the money.
Clearly, it's more responsibility and there should be more pay associated with it. I'll just kick off the conversation with that. We have to make a judgment as to what the right amount is. I will say that if we go in there with the maximum, I would guess that would be cut back by DHCD if it doesn't undermine our application in a way that I would rather not have been undermined at this stage here. If 78,750 is I'm just gonna throw something out so we can discuss it, okay, is what she would be getting as once they get around to approving our budget. I also have another data point talking to DHCD where this came in earlier today, and I have a copy of this memo. Carrie Souza, actually, that's my copy. Take this one because I did double.
Actually, Reg, if the leasing director is making $79,000, I'm sure the executive director should make a hell of a lot more, period.
Excuse me, I am not making that much.
Yeah. So Janice.
Janice,
hang
figure
there.
out what you're
Let me-
talking about before you open your mouth.
Yeah.
Okay,
so-
I heard that.
Hang
You
on,
need to
guys.
read before you talk.
All right, please, Nita. Thank you. Let me call on you. I'm sorry that Janice said that, and Janice, hopefully you can wait for me to finish my point here. So,
Okay,
all right, so, basically, I'm gonna summarize it here because Janice can't see it here, but I wanted people to have a copy. Janice, I'll drop this all off at your house later on today if you want, or I'll scan it and email it to you when I get home. But basically, Carrie, so I reached out to Bob Pelletier when all this was going on a week ago. And I reported on that in the Saturday board meeting, and I reached out to them again. And I got this back from not Bob Pelletier, who was not available because he's out doing things, but from his boss, Carrie Souza. And it basically points out that with Steve being out of commission right now, there's another provision that we should be considering, which is, you know, when really starting on the day that Steve fell and continuing to the present and during his recovery period, Cheryl is acting as acting executive director. You know, she's not the assistant executive director, and the DHCD has a provision for this sort of circumstance. It's usually when somebody quits, but it's also when somebody takes ill. And that is that we should be considering as a separate resolution tonight appointing Cheryl as acting executive director. And the reason why that's important is there's these documents to be signed and forms to be filled out and, you know, ELOC system stuff to be done. And there needs to be a signing authority for that kind of thing. For example, we just passed a $460,000 motion, you know, approval of the the Captain Robert Cook route. And, you know, things need to be signed for that, and money needs to be checked out for that. So, so what she said is, if that's the case, then their policy is that she should get 105% of her current salary, for that, purpose. Okay, and from my point of view, 105% of her current salary is her current, as fiscal year 2023 salary, which is $78,750 as an assistant executive director. So if somebody whips out there, I was going to do this before the meeting, but I ran out of time. If I take out my calculator and took 78,750 times 1.05, that's 82,687 and 50 cents. So 82,688, call it. And I'm throwing this out for discussion. I'm not trying to ignore Janice's comment that there's no amount of money that, you know, we shouldn't consider paying Cheryl, but we have to act as, you know, a board, fiduciary and so forth and so on. We have to look at getting this approved by DHCD. And to my mind, there's a rationale that goes into the letter that needs to be transmittal letter that needs to be written next week that says that that we approved a first year salary of $82,687 as you know, the offer we're making to Cheryl that would go in the contract. So
Wait, I'm confused, but that's for acting.
that's for being the that's for being the executive director.
But this
No.
from DHCD is about if somebody's an acting.
That's
executive
correct.
director.
I'm just looking for some way of putting a rationale out there to recognize that she deserves more compensation. Now, we don't have to do it that way. And I may not have explained it very well, but we can't sort of pick some number out of thin air and say, that's what we think it ought to be. So I've tried to gather all the data, you know, and again, I gave you what the AMI is in our area, which is very expensive.
So, but you're saying that this email from DHCD, that this is something that we would vote separate from the hiring Cheryl as ED.
Making the appointment.
We would make this temporary appointment.
Yeah, we just need to acknowledge it so it's in the record.
Right,
and
at the
minutes, yeah.
salary that you just mentioned, the 82.
So I wasn't trying to conflate the two. I was just giving you this as another financial benchmark that they're considering. That's what they consider somebody should get. Now, this would go on for 6 months. Somebody like Cheryl was standing in for 6 months would get 82, 680.
But it would only go in this case until DHCD approves her contract as actual. ED.
Well, we put that number in the question is, what do we put in the contract that, you know?
Can I make an observation?
Yes, please.
If our prior executive director started out at 85,000
Mhm.
and we've had some significant inflation
Mhm.
since then. For us to offer a starting salary as executive director of 85,000
Mhm,
would seem to be very realistic.
mhm.
So you're suggesting 82,688. I'm suggesting at least 85.
Yeah, this, and you know, it's a judgment call, so I'm not trying, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to tee up the
And
discussion.
that's why, how I would justify
Yeah.
that, and considering inflation, it could even be higher than 85.
Right. So, what do you think, Penny?
I was looking at it from the point of view of 103 and some middle ground between that and the 82.
Mhm.
So I would go for a little higher than 85, maybe by putting in the current inflation would be, what is it?
7%.
6 now? 7%?
Well, the average for the last year was 7%.
Yeah, so that would get it up to about 90 probably. I can see that you don't want to go for the very top because you don't want to scare them.
I'm concerned about that, yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it would have a reverse effect if we did not ask for
Mhm.
a higher amount.
Okay. By
I'm
the way,
looking
I
at
will-
88.
I'm looking at 90.
Okay, I do want to say that what Cheryl's answered in one of their interview questions, and Ed, if you mind sitting back,
Oh,
I can do the eye contact here. So, was absolutely true. Ever since Steve, got sick, which was 2 weeks ago, I've long losing track of time, but there was a ton of stuff going on that I was involved in, let alone whatever else was going on with we had 2 CPC meetings that I haven't reported on, and Steve was gonna be there, representing the housing authority, and Cheryl canceled personal appointments so she could attend them at night, and turning around resume updates. I get emails from her at 1 AM in the morning, and so there's, because definitely it's a I'm glad that Steve is on the mend, but it's definitely been quite a whirlwind over the last couple of weeks, to say the least, and I haven't had a chance to report on any of the normal agenda items, but lots gotten done, and nothing has broken that I know of, at least in my area. So we have 88 and 90 on the floor. How about you, Eleanor? What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you look at 85, which was the starting salary for Angie, and that was in whenever,
2019.
or
Plus
2019.
7% inflation is that,
Oh, I did 7% inflation and came out with 90, anyway,
okay.
whatever, so like 91. I mean, and 7% inflation was just this past year, not
Mhm.
the multiple years in between. So, I mean, I would say 91 at least.
So we have
Thank you,
88,
Eleanor.
90, and 91 here. The other thing you can put in there, I know from prior, is you can also put a COLA, which means cost of living escalator. So we can put a number in now that would go through the end of the year. And then on January 1st, 2020, 4, when you have another year ahead, we can also get to maybe where we need to go to keep this attractive candidate. We don't want to lose any more executive directors for the next 15 years. We can get there in 2 steps, and sometimes that's an easier way to get, a regulatory body to kind of consider the right thing to do here. Yes.
Comment, if we use 85 as a base, making a comparison to our former executive director,
Mhm.
and we do a COLA increase of 7%, that comes out to 90,950.
Okay.
I have something to add.
Let's go ahead, Janice.
I just want to say, this is the decade of the woman. And here we have a woman that we need for at least a decade. Show her the money, because we're gonna have women presidents, I believe, in this next decade or so.
Hopefully, as with two daughters, I agree with you 100% on that. But what I will say is when we write this letter next week, we have to sort of show some kind of rationale. They can disagree with our rationale. So what Ed is proposing, I think, Eleanor is kind of zeroing in on as well, as we can say, well, if we just took that number and we applied COLA for, the period of time that's gone by, it's the same amount as our new, first time executive director got. And we just thought that was the right thing to do. And if that rounds up to 91,000, then, I can write that justification based on that. Yeah.
Reggie, I have a question.
Sure, Jim.
I thought that the advertisement for the executive director's job was gonna be 96,000.
It actually went out at 101,000 and
Why are you going down so low?
no, that's the
It was
maximum.
advertised.
No, that was advertised as the maximum that could be paid based on somebody's qualifications.
My memory was 94,000.
Yeah,
As advertised, why are you going away from that number?
we're not. I have the advertisement here. I'll show you the advertisement afterwards, okay? Okay, I have it in the folder here.
Yeah.
Remind us, we're trying to zero. It's almost 10 o'clock and we haven't done our regular business yet. Let me just put it that way. So, and I don't want to do any of those Peter Pinkator midnight meetings if you don't. Thank you very much. So go ahead, Benny.
Just wondering if there's another way to rationalize getting that 91 that Ed just suggested. 85,000 plus COLA is 91. Is there a way we can get it up to another 3,000?
Well, I mean, I guess what I was thinking was, because you could also look at it, so 85 was what we contracted in 2019, right? So, I mean, there's actually been, so there was 2019, I mean, there have been a whole bunch of years since then.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
It's actually more than 7%.
right, so like if you took, even if you took 85 and you did say inflation, well, I mean, inflation was less than, so even if you just did, 5%, and then you got to 89,250, then you do another 7%, oh, sorry, no, and then that gets you to 95,497. But actually there should have been even, because there would have been 2019, 2020, 2021, and 22, there were actually 4 years there, so you'd probably even get above 102 for at that rate, but I mean, I think that it's defensible either way.
Yeah, I think that, knowing how they love they appreciate their, count, check the boxes thing, Angie had worked in a, in a housing authority on the front lines in both Worcester and Fall River. And, we're asking them to regard her commissioner experiences, if not one-to-one equivalent, at least, something that gets you to a level of like understanding in a different way. And I guess I would feel not because I don't agree with you 100% of the math, that I think going to 95 might be, I have no way of justifying this. I just, my gut tells me I'd rather go to like 91. I think I can write a really strong justification for, because and also have the COLA in there between now and, at the end of the year that would cut in, that gets her there in 2 steps, something like that. And, but again, we just need to make a judgment call.
Okay, so you're proposing 91,000.
Well, I'm just listening as hard as I can to everybody, and I think 91 plus a 5% COLA is, I think, as close as all our gut feels are gonna kind of get us to one number that we have to pick here. And I would also say, again, that normally you have these discussions behind closed doors and you're not, not in front of everybody else, so. But if I were behind closed doors, and just to be transparent, I would be saying, she's gonna get there anyway. It's a big jump over what she's having right now from, 78 to 91. And and you want to kind of, normally with employees, you want to kind of do things in steps. You don't want to get a huge jump all at the same time, just as a, manner of good personnel management here. You want to basically say, you're gonna get there, but, so,
So you are saying.
I can-
91
yeah.
For the beginning of the executive director contract.
yeah, 6 months, 60 days from now would
Yeah.
start,
And then in 6 months, there'd be a COLA increase, is that right?
oh, yeah, that's
Of
right.
5%,
For next
did you
fiscal
say?
year.
Yeah, so it would be for the next, it would be probably would need to be couched as prorated, so, depending on when they approve the contract, it'd be 5% COLA annually prorated for, if it's for a 9-month period or 8-month period, it would be, applied that way.
I have a question about the vacations.
Certainly. Go ahead.
I guess she's been on the job for a year now as assistant. What is the progression? Is that a policy or regulation?
Regulation, and I don't know the exact answer to that. Sorry, I probably should have thought of that question, but I didn't. But it's it's based on your years of service, basically. And so it's not a discretionary item where we can say, give her 10 weeks of vacation, that kind of thing.
I hope not.
Yeah, you deserve it, doing this kind of tough job, but yeah. Okay, so, if.
Can I move?
Can move, but let Eleanor put, maybe craft the words that, need to, and I can help with that. That will be your motion. Can you write us the motion here quickly, Eleanor?
Yeah, working on it.
Hang on a second. While she's doing that, again, one of the reasons I did all these cross comparisons is, again, this is stuff that needs to go into the transmittal letter with the supports that we've taken a kind of mathematical and rational and logical way of doing it. And as much as, if I can pick on you, Janice, as much as you say he deserves $130,000 a year for this tough job, that is not gonna cut any mustard upstairs with our friends at the.
Oh, I know that, Reg, trust me. But I can still say it.
I think we all agree on that.
Thank you, Penny.
Let me get
And
my
then do we
sheet.
just, do we sign the contract now and then send it to DHCD?
You're authorizing the chair to sign it. Yeah, that's it.
Now, we don't, wait,
Yeah.
you don't have DHCD.
No,
approve it, and then-
you have to, the chair, has to be authorized to sign the agreement with the candidate based on these terms, and then the signed contract goes to DHCD, and, they countersign it. They send it back, countersigned, when they get a chance to review it.
Okay, so to offer the position of Needham Housing Authority Executive Director to Cheryl Gosman at a starting salary of 91,000 with a 5% COLA increase after 12 months. And with a Needham Housing Authority provided cell phone, and to authorize the NHA Chair to sign the contract of employment with Cheryl, all subject to approval of the contract by DHCD.
Was it a 12-month or 6?
Well, that's what I want to know. So with the COLA increase, would it be aligned to the fiscal year? So that
yeah,
it would start,
fiscal year, so that you need to
Right,
reword it
yeah,
slightly
so
there.
it would be, with a 5% COLA starting in the next fiscal
Right,
year.
yeah, starting, next fiscal year. You need to
Or
use the
starting
word
January.
prorated in there somewhere in the sentence as well. In other words, if,
Well, it's not really prorated because it would be for a whole year, a whole fiscal. Because it goes.
Yeah, but
until-
it applies to the fact that she's only been on, if she's been on board 1 month, let's say she joined in, November 1st and went on board, you wouldn't apply a whole 5% to the 1 month, In other words, otherwise you're kind of fudging what you're really offering the person. So it needs to read 5% prorated. So if it's 3/4, if it's 4/5 of a year, then she would get a 4% bump.
But it'll be. I mean, it's 5% at the annual rate of 91,000,
Yes, that's right.
right?
You're applying the proration to the 5%.
But but the 5% would be, it would be. She would get 91,000 starting from when DHCD approves the contract through
Right.
the end of 2023. Then for all of fiscal 2024, it would be 91. It'd be 91 plus 5, an entire 5%.
Well, we can word it that way. They may kick it back. I think of this, I know it usually, who knows? It usually works where if, let's say it was 6%, so I can do the math in my head, okay? So, if she came to work, DHCD approved the 91,000 on July 1st. And then 6 months would go by, a 6% prorated COLA would increase that 91,000 by 3%, because
So you're-
only 6 months have gone by.
You're-
COLA is usually applied to the retroactively to the number of years, good, feels like years, number of months that you work.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're applying COLA retroactively.
Yeah,
That's
you're-
what the two of us
Because
were.
you're applying it to the
Yeah.
retroactive salary.
Yeah, okay.
It is
Yeah.
typically the way it's
Now-
done. in
now
the
that
private
makes
sector,
sense.
yeah.
I'm not quite sure I got that, so. It's the COLA would become effective.
So
when-
for example, if a maintenance person comes on board halfway through the year,
Yeah,
written into the union contract or written into what we put into the budget. If you've only worked a half a year and they've approved a 3% COLA for everybody for the next year, the person who's only been working 6 months gets 1.5% COLA.
mm,
And the person who's been working a year gets 3% COLA. Because it's at the time frame that you're applying the COLA to is retroactively based on the amount of time that goes by.
okay. Um,
So if you just throw in the word prorated, 5 COLA, 5% prorated, I can't even talk anymore. It's really, that will fix the problem. That will capture the sense of the resolution.
I think Eleanor just wants to have it straight in her mind, how she wants to present it.
Right,
Yeah,
it's a little
we're
bit of a
giving her a
drafting
moment here.
challenge. At 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Right, we're all tired. And my ankle's killing me.
I'm sure our excellent Secretary Pro Tem will get the minutes correctly depicted as a result of this conversation here.
Is that Penny at the moment?
Yes, it is.
I'm
Okay, so this
waiting.
might be a little long, but to offer the position of Needham Housing Authority Executive Director to Cheryl Gosman at a starting salary of 91,000 with a 5% COLA prorated. With 5% COLA increase starting January 1, 2024. Prorated based on the number of months. In the executive director position in calendar 2023. And to authorize the chair to sign the contract of employment, subject to approval. Of the contract by
Yeah.
DHCD.
So if I interpret that, then if she started as the executive director on July 1st. And so she'd only have 6 months in 2023. With a 5% COLA increase, she'd only be getting 2.5% increase from
That's right.
2024.
That's right. Whereas if she started on January 1st, 2023,
I guess my feeling is, why don't we just say 5% COLA starting January 2024, and if they reject it, so I guess we have to take another vote at that time.
we can.
Because I think, I don't know, when I've gotten COLA increase, I don't ever remember, like, I guess usually in my jobs, I've been evaluated, a year after I started the job, as
Mhm.
opposed to.
Right, they have a rolling
Right.
deadline, so it's never an issue under those circumstances there. But, you can do, without putting all that extra language, if you just put 5%, a COLA of 5%, comma, prorated, comma, then that wording does the trick. That fits, you don't need all the extra explanation here.
I guess I'm just saying, aside from the language of it,
Yeah.
I guess my preference is to just say,
It's at this late hour.
go with the 5%.
I agree with Eleanor.
And if DHCD doesn't like it, then they can tell us and we'll
Fine.
address it at that point.
I'm easy at this point.
Okay, so to offer the position of Needham Housing Authority Executive Director to Cheryl Gosman at a starting salary of 1,000 with a 5% COLA increase starting January 1st, 2024. And with a Needham Housing Authority provided cell phone. And to authorize the chair to sign the contract of employment, comma, subject to approval of the contract by DHCD.
That sounds good. And what you can do is sleep on it and write it up tomorrow morning and
Okay.
send it to Penny for the minutes.
Okay,
So,
so Janice, you are making that motion, is that right?
yes, do I hear?
Yes.
And do I hear a second from anybody?
Second,
Second, Penny Kerr. I have to say, do I hear any further discussion? And hearing none, we will take a roll call vote. Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice?
Chair.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Well,
Thank you,
congratulations,
Eleanor.
Sherry.
Thank
Congratulations.
you very much.
Okay,
Unanimous.
we got a couple more things.
The interim and the.
Yeah, we're about to go there. Yeah, so,
Can't write any-
we have two more things. We have one more thing related to this that we need to do. And we need to have, I guess, what they call a lightning round on a couple of important agenda items before we break here, the regular agenda items here. I would like to hear a motion from somebody to appointing Cheryl Gosman, our assistant executive director as acting executive director with a commensurate 5% increase in her base salary while she serves in that role.
I make the motion that we
Just made a motion.
commensurate Cheryl
Yeah.
Gosman with the
Yeah,
5%
There's a
increase
motion on
on
the floor,
her.
Janice.
No, I asked for the motion, so.
Okay.
Janice is making the motion.
Yeah, I motion that we give Cheryl the 5% increase, backdated to Steve's. Sorry about that, Steve, to,
Yeah,
to,
sure.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
to Steve's illness, as from day one.
So we'll
And-
ask, do I have a second of that motion?
Second.
Second from Penny Kirk. I'm gonna ask Eleanor to also craft the wording on that. Which I heard to be that you make a slightly different what I asked for, which was fine. You make a motion to appoint Cheryl Evans or Gosman, our assistant executive director as acting executive director. And to also implement a 5% salary increase commensurate with DHCD guidelines. Retroactive to the day, whatever that date is, the Friday date, which is 2 weeks ago, I think tomorrow. So what is that? Friday the 17th, so it's Friday the 3rd, I think it was, and.
Thank
to-
you,
and-
Rich.
and-
You did just about as good a job as I did, but I was
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah,
I was trying to,
you got it.
give
You know,
homage to Steve as well wishes for him and for Cheryl as well, so.
And to act in capacity until it's no longer needed, so.
Actually, he was away, before that. Didn't attend the meeting on Friday before he went to Florida.
No, it was the Friday, he was back. So we'll get the date right, but I think it's Friday the 3rd. Yeah. So that's it. So, any further discussion on that motion and the second from Penny here?
Nope.
Hearing none, we'll call the roll again. Rich Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Any church votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, we come to the regular agenda. I'm gonna just use chairman's prerogative and dispense with resident input for the first time since I've been here. If that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
I'm going to suggest to the board that we need to approve the warrant, obviously, and the minutes.
Are we skipping over resident input?
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
So, and I'm gonna suggest to the board that we approve the warrant and the minutes. And I don't think ask if anybody has any questions on anything else. And then maybe adjourn for the evening. Is that okay with everybody?
aye.
Yeah,
So yes,
Okay, right, great. So we're agenda item A, the bill check warrant for $350,583.62, or it actually should be $406,425.01 if you match it up to the packet there. Do I make that motion? Do I hear a second? Second from Penny. Any discussion? All those in favor, no. Call the roll. Red Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
any church votes aye.
Janice Bennett aye.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the High Rock Home LLC bills schedule check warrant of $34,881.75. Do I hear a second?
Second,
We got Ed in there for the second. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Any church votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, we come to the minutes of the 1/5/2023 NHA special board meeting that are in your packet. I make a motion that we approve those minutes. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second,
Are there any changes or edits or anything?
No.
Hearing none. Reg Foster, I'll call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Any church votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the 1/19/2023 NHA HRH LLC regular board meeting. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Ed Scheidler. Any comments or predictions or edits? I noticed a couple of typos to be fixed in there. So we can stipulate that we'll get, minor immaterial typos fixed. Anything else? Hearing no other comments, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye to approve the minutes.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Any church votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Does any of the board members have any questions for Cheryl, our acting Executive Director Cheryl Gosman, on anything else that's in the board packet. I have one thing, Cheryl, would you mind announcing it, that I do think is worth announcing? The last item here in F6, the Family Self-Sufficiency Grant, because we haven't actually acknowledged it in public.
That's-
Why is that on the agenda?
I'm sorry.
Family Self-Sufficiency Grant.
Yep, the F6.
The FSS, I can help you out on that.
We were awarded this grant, there was a typo in the actual grant. And it lists the incorrect housing authority.
Oh my God.
But it recognizes our housing authority ID, which is MA 065. And so Steve actually called me in the office and said, I'm sorry, we didn't get the grant. And he mentioned the MA 065, and I said, that's us. And so I called Caitlin Johnson, our housing specialist, and she confirmed, well, she was a little not sure. She found that it was unusual for housing authorities to get 2 grants in 1 year. But she confirmed that we were awarded the grant.
How much is it? Do you remember?
Sorry?
How much is it? Do you remember?
It's approximately 189.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thousand. And we would then yearly renew that grant. So we would apply for renewal. We're a new recipient, we would apply for renewal. We have to develop an admin plan that is due to HUD by March 31st. And then I have to get ELOC access to be able to draw down funds from that grant as well. So it's really extremely exciting. I've been training and watching videos and getting oriented on the tenets of the grant. And I look forward to working with NHA. What the grant actually does, it gives our residents an ability to develop assets. So if they are enrolled in a program that will improve their self-sufficiency, through job increase or et cetera, their rent will increase, but through the FSS program, that increase, that percentage of the increase would go into an escrow account. And once the resident completes the program, they can withdraw those funds. How's that sound, Nita?
So
Nita?
she's there.
Okay.
She's probably as sleepy
But
as I am.
it's very
Here.
exciting. It's a great
She's nodding
opportunity
yes here, so.
for people to get access.
So 2 more things. I remembered one piece of business that we need to do, but I also wanted, as I understand it, we're making progress with finding a replacement person for Gary Krupal. Is that right? Just
No,
briefly.
we're not. We hired a mechanic laborer. Gary, are
Mhm.
you there?
Yep.
Can you speak to that person? We're hiring. We haven't actually.
Well, I
done it.
haven't seen any of this Corey or something come back, but we did make a job offer to a new candidate for the maintenance position that's open right now. Assuming all his Corey comes back, his physical and all that comes back, then he would be a hire, starting March 6th.
So what I was gonna say is I did speak to Steve earlier today, and he's now back in the saddle enough, so he's thinking about Gary's replacement. Gary has been kind enough to make sure we're not left in the lurch, and if there's some secret switch or valve or something like that nobody can find, he's not disappearing off the face of the earth. So I just wanted to note that for the minutes. That's a major priority, obviously, that needs to be followed up on. And then the last thing, I was just going through my checklist and I forgot one thing, sorry about that. But I would like to come back to the thought that the board tonight, because it's part of what I want to mention next week in the DHCD packet that's going in, the board tonight would entertain a motion to invest in a mentor coaching sort of consulting relationship for Cheryl over the you know, at least the first year of her being the new executive director, should that get approved by DHCD. Does everybody agree with that, being a good thing to
Yes,
do?
absolutely.
Okay, so, does somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
I shall move.
Okay, Ed so
Second.
moved and Penny seconded. Is there any further discussion? And what we'll do is when Steve gets back in the saddle a bit more, we'll investigate what the options for that is and report that back to the board, next. Okay. So hearing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye on that motion.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice
And,
Bennett votes aye.
great. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
No, one motion to adjourn and one second. Okay, that, I think I heard Penny making the motion and Janice seconding, and hearing no further discussion. Reg, for the last time, Reg Foster votes aye.
Eleanor Evans votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. This is a.
Thank you, guys, for
really
coming
big
and
meeting.
putting up with us all this time. Thank you very much.
And,
I know, it was a long night.
log off.
Night.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of the day. What's left?
I'm gonna turn the meeting here.